What's up, guys? We're going to take a look at a hot lap around Hungaroring in the Lexus, where I'll be talking through the lap, explaining what reference points I use, my inputs in terms of steering, throttle, braking, and other minor details about the track. So coming into turn 1, I look for the 100-meter board on the left side as well as the GT sign if it's there. You can also use the pit exit line as a reference, but that one might be a little bit more difficult to spot depending on the conditions of the track. When braking for turn 1, I try and brake just before the 100-meter board, while slowly angling the car in towards the apex. Ideally, you'd want to keep the wheel as straight as possible to make sure that you're getting the most out of the front tires under braking, but that's a bit of a driver's preference, also to make sure that I'm as close to the apex as possible once I get there. As I get closer to the apex, I tend to slowly let off the brake, while introducing more steering input into the front tires to make sure that I don't exceed the amount of grip that the tires have to offer. As soon as I'm confident that I've slowed the car down enough to get the nose turned in for the corner, I'll start accelerating as much as possible, even leading on the traction control, towards the exit even before I have the car pointed in a straight line towards the exit. So there's still steering input being done, but I can trust that the car is going to straighten up as I expect it and not understeer or oversteer too much, even when coming off the curb on the inside, which I did miss a little bit on this lap. Coming into turn 2, I'm focused entirely on the curb on the right side as you come into the corner. I brake just as the front of the car reaches that curb, or a little bit after if you're low on fuel and the track is optimum, and it'll vary on car to car, obviously. As I do that, I do bring the front of the car in towards the apex fairly early on, because turn 2 is an off-camber corner, and if you go wide early on through the corner, it'll be very difficult to bring the car back in to the apex and for the exit, leading into turn 3. Turn 2 is a corner that you can sacrifice the exit a little bit, depending on the car that you have. If you have a car that's very agile, and you can run wide out of the exit of 2 and then bring the car all the way over to the left very quickly, then that's fine. I've struggled to do that a little bit in the Lexus, so I'm taking a fairly tight exit in order to set the car up for turn 3 so that it's flat. For turn 4, I'm looking again to the right side for the curb. Ideally, you don't want to hit it as it can unsettle the car on entry, especially when you brake for the corner, but get as close to that as possible. Brake early if you have to, and then you can attack the curb on the left side, assuming your car can handle it. Some of the mid-engine cars may not like it as much, so in that case, giving yourself a little bit more leeway, maybe carry a little bit less speed through the corner to make sure that you still get the nose turned in for the exit, so you don't run wide and invalidate your lap. Turn 5 is a very difficult corner. It's something that I don't have a good reference for, so I do go by feel in terms of how much I've accelerated after going through turn 4. Ideally, I prefer to keep a fairly tight line, keeping it close to the apex, because I know that if I push a little bit too far on the entry, the car is going to understeer more, and I'll have to wait longer to get onto the power on the exit. Turns 6 and 7 are everybody's favorite turn on this track. I like to brake just as soon as the nose of the car passes the curb on the left side, and because I'm in the Lexus, a lot of front-engine cars should be fairly okay with this. You can attack the curbs fairly aggressively and maintain your apex speed through it. Turn 8 and 9 come up very quickly, so as soon as you shift into third gear in the Lexus, I'm immediately braking, dropping down to the top of second gear ideally, and kind of coasting the car through the corner, applying a little bit of throttle to balance the car as needed. Then for turn 9, I like to take a fairly tight entry and use the curb to help rotate the car. Then you can get on power fairly early and use plenty of the runoff on the left side. Turns 10 and 11 are the best test of your car's aerodynamic stability and balance. Ideally, turn 10 should be flat, and you should be able to get the nose in so that the car is far enough to the left to take a nice, smooth, wide line through turn 11. For turn 11, I don't like to run all the way to the left side to the curb, because I find that that can unsettle the car, and you may already be pushing too far if you're at that curb. I try to gently touch the curb on the right side through the apex to help get the car rotated. Turn 12 is a very simple corner. I look for the curb on the left side. As soon as it's lined up with the front of my car, I'll brake. For front engine cars, it is easier to attack the curb on the inside at the apex. For mid rear engine cars, it might be a little bit more difficult to keep the car balanced. So you don't need to be too aggressive over there because there is plenty of runoff on the left side as well. You can extend onto the AstroTurf past the curb, and your lap will still be valid. Turn 13 I don't have a great reference point for. It is a corner that I do by feel. In the Lexus it works out fairly well because by the time you're supposed to be braking, assuming you got turn 12 right, you should be close or at the top of third gear. So as soon as you're at that point, brake, drop down to first gear, and then roll the car through the corner. A little bit of brake to help get it rotated. And again, on the exit, there's no ideal reference point for when you should be accelerating. That is again something that I do by feel, so it is something that you will have to learn. The best reference that I can see for when to accelerate out of this corner are the barriers in the very distance. There's a slip road that has orange barriers blocking it. For me, once those are in my peripheral vision, that's around the time that I should be on the accelerator or at full throttle. For turn 14, again I don't have an ideal reference. The best that I can see is that there is a line that marks the pit entry that runs across the entire surface of the track. Ideally, braking just as that leaves your field of view should be around the ideal time to brake for the corner. As for when to accelerate out of the corner, the barrier that splits the main track from the pit entry is around the time when I start to get on the throttle. I'll usually start on about half throttle just to make sure that I'm not accelerating too early, because in that case you can run wide, run off the track. And that about sums up a lap of Hungaroring. I hope that this helps you guys find some reference points to use as you're going through the lap. Obviously it's difficult to try and spot these every lap, every single time, but the more you use them, the more you'll find a rhythm around the track, and you'll be able to do it a little bit more naturally over time.
Lovely, nice little fastest lap. Well done, mate. Nice little lesson.